introduce you to today's presenter, Matt Donovan. As the Vice President of GP Strategy's Learning Solutions Group, Matt has more than 19 years of experience crafting training and development solutions with a focus on performance-driven learning. He has a master's degree in Instructional Systems Technology from Indiana University. Matt has led the production of more than 300 custom online courses for Fortune 500 companies. His team has developed courseware for sales, marketing, manufacturing, clinical research, compliance, leadership, and ethics, earning industry awards including Brandon Hall and Horizon Interactive. Many of his courses employ a scenario-based approach focusing on reinforcing authentic work practice. Matt has presented at several national and international conferences, including ISPI, ASTD, eLearning Guild, and SPBT. Personally, Matt has been recognized as one of the top 10 international trainers under 40 by Training Magazine. He also received a presidential citation from ISPI for his work in establishing the ISPI annual Human Performance Technology Case Study Competition. With that, Matt, I'd like to turn the session over to you.
That's with guys taking a look at predictive personalization. So just a little bit of a look here at the presentation today. We're going to focus on things of the future, things that may be coming around the bend, some of the things that are already here, and some things that we imagine may never have come to be. So I will set it up by saying I don't have all the answers, but what is fascinating, I'm hoping to bring some things that you guys will, I hope, inspire you, generate some things you haven't seen, and hopefully have us thinking a little bit different as we take a look at some things we've learned from our partners in the marketing industry and how we might apply those to workplace learning and performance systems. So starting off here with the future now, you can see on the screen, and what I'm sharing here is in this scene, it's a scene from the movie Minority Report, so I'm not sure if how many of you have actually seen this or not, but in the scene set up here, the primary character, Tom Cruise, is being chased on foot by some folks, and he's running into a mall. And the scene sets up that as he runs into a mall of the future, and he's walking down a hallway between the stores, there's a retinal scanner that identifies who he is, and as they're going through, the advertisements actually identify who he is based on what they know about him and start customizing the messaging to him. So they start calling him by name, they start identifying what would look good for him or what he might want based on either his history, his preferences, and a lot of information that's built into it. There's actually one scene in here where it's funny in the sense that the retinal scanner identifies him as somebody else who under a different name. And it was interesting because they were offering him a pair of pants that he thought he would never wear. But the idea here is that the ability to customize a message on the fly to an individual based on what we know about them, the data we've collected, the data they've provided to us, and be able to customize a response to them. The question is that how far away is that from being so? And I think in the next couple of slides, in the next couple of minutes, you'll see that it's really not that far away. So if you take a look at a couple other examples, which I've actually personally experienced, the first one here in the upper left hand is with Disney with the wristband. So if you go to a Disney property and you check in and you're going to be spending some time there with your family, you get these wristbands, which are basically RFID radio, and they are basically ways to communicate. Not only are they your room key, they open the door to your room, but you can also swipe to pay with them. And as you go around the park, you can actually interact with characters and elements within the physical space. They'll call you by name or they'll customize a greeting. So what it's doing is based on a wearable technology, where you are within the premise, it'll adjust based on what it knows about you. In the lower right-hand corner, this is an example of a digital dressing room that makes recommendations and allow you to virtually try on clothes. Some of these things are in practice where they're what I'd say very early versions where they're overlaying them. In this case, the impact probably needs more refinement in it, but the idea where all of a sudden you could actually have almost a professional shopper system built into when you walk into it, based on what it knows about you and what it's able to share with you, it's able to bring up some outfits or bring some things together to kind of offer to you, or augment even the individual sales folks that you may be interacting with. So extending that customer experience. So these are some of the things that, whereas I was showing you on the Minority Report were things of the future, these are some examples of the things that are actually coming to be right now. So when we're talking about predictive personalization, what we're talking about is the ability to predict audience behavior, needs, and wants to create a tailored multi-channel experience. And it's achieved through tools like predictive analysis, geo-based location technologies, and wearable technologies. A lot of things which are not only, I would say, achievable, and we've starting to see these in the marketplace, but they're actually feasible from a price standpoint in some cases. So how are people using some of these things today? So when you look at, from a predictive personalization standpoint, it can predict a course selection. So if you think of something, for example, around like degree compass, based on what your course history has been, your course performance, where you've been, how you've feedback from peers, things like that, it actually can start to make recommendations for the next courses you should be taking in your overall curriculum. Another example is in Netflix, where we're talking about predicting entertainment preferences. So based off of prior selections of movies, types of movies that you want to watch, things that you found interesting, things that you didn't find interesting or passed by what you weren't watching, they're able to bring recommendations and selections and adjust what they make available to you, make suggestions, put things in front of you. A lot of folks, I'm sure, have probably seen the Netflix, or another example would be Amazon with, you know, the reader at the bottom that says, you know, other people that have bought this have also found these items interesting or have purchased these items as well. And what it's identifying is not only what your preferences are, but what other folks that share traits with your buying behaviors actually share back with you, and that these are some things they found interesting as well in order to predict what you may find valuable. And then one that's actually interesting is around predicting human attraction. I think one of the, I mean, you could think of one site being Match.com, where you, or there's several sites of that where they gather a bunch of data, they run an algorithm, and basically they find matches that you would be compatible with. It's trying to predict who would you be compatible with, and based then upon a further refinement of who things have worked out with, or a conversation, or who you chose to partner with, it refines its algorithm and it comes back with adjusted recommendations. Tinder's another one that is actually more of a social aspect with it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Tinder, but essentially Tinder really is what I would say a social networking app that's geographically located, and it identifies people in the area, and then based on whether you swipe right, swipe left, essentially, if the other person is doing the same kind of thing, it'll make a connection. But what it's basing on is the information from a geographical location, what it knows about you, where the other people are, and then how you're choosing to connect with it. So it's starting to use bits and pieces of this data to come back together and predict things that you know, your future behaviors, what would be valuable for you. It's helping you select through all the options and trying to make the most relevant options for you. So how's it being used in the learning and performance world today? Some of the things that we're seeing starting to emerge, we're looking at things like personalized online sales courses based on key demographic questions, so based on regions and where you may be with an organization, based on products where you're selling, based on your strengths and weaknesses, based on what it's learned about you. It starts to make recommendations for courses that would augment your ongoing development paths. And then, you know, tying it into the Experience API and bringing together all the past experiences, trying to predict future experiences that would be of value for you, things to learn, things to review, more things to bring in and connect with. So these are just some of the emerging ways where folks are starting to take the data that we're capturing and learning about from our learners and our performers, and starting to help refine the ways in which it's making recommendations to ultimately reach that very valuable position of helping people find things that are relevant to them learn and perform in today's world. So amongst, I know that I work with a lot of partner clients who I think are experiencing what I would consider to be learner fatigue, where they've dropped thousands of hours of courses. They're all available in the catalogs. You even go out to something like lynda.com. So what we need with the availability of content and all the materials, how do you begin to think about making it relevant? And I think there's lots of room where we can continue to refine some of these practices that we're seeing in the marketing world. We can drive more towards creating algorithms that help drive what's relevant to them, using data and inputs based on what we know, where they want to go, career progression, thinking through all of those things to be able to shape and make more predictive recommendations for learning assets, curated pieces, collaborative experiences that will help shape people's future performance. So how is it evolving? So we're seeing a lot of things with the rise of wearables, wearable technology. We saw the picture of the band through Disney, the radio frequency ID, so the ability to now connect and communicate, whether it's through RFID or whether it's through Bluetooth. Beacons, which are fascinating. There's a couple of different products out there, but essentially they're small wireless sensors that you can attach to any location or object. They're battery friendly, low energy, and they really, in many ways, run off of Bluetooth connections. But you can attach it to a product. You can put it into a position, and when you come near with a device, an app on your smartphone or an app on your device is able to read that, and you're able to gather information, have something available there that's related to where you are, what you're near, what you're looking at. So it is very context relevant, bringing information to you at that point. Near field communication, which is really a set of technologies that enable smartphones and other devices to establish radio communication with each other. I think probably in these really close proximity, so you're thinking about 4 inches or less, but an example is the mobile tap-to-pay wallets, those kind of things where you have connection with other devices and you're able to share information or make a payment, those kind of connections. Mobile augmented reality. This is a very interesting thing. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see the Audi mobile augmented reality user's manual. But think about it, adding a layer of information over an actual physical object. So instead of where virtual reality is immersing the user in a complete virtual space, what this does is augmented reality means it's a layer over what your real experience already is. So imagine if you were looking at an engine, or in this case, the internal elements of your car, and you wanted to know about, for example, what does this button do? You'd be able to look at it, and then based on what it's taking in, where your location, what you're looking at, it would have information to say, this dial does this. Or it may say, learn how to connect your Bluetooth based on a Bluetooth icon, and then you'd be able to see with the overlay what you need to connect with. And immediately for that first time learner or performer, that's a great way to connect with the information and have it right there at the point of performance. Other things are image recognition and GPS, which are great tools as well. But the GPS is actually getting better, tighter, and so that you can get closer locations and information about where they are in relationship to other items. So these are just some of the technologies, and a lot of these technologies are actually approaching the point of affordability. In some of these cases, some of the device-related things are under $100. In some cases, the actual items that you would teach, like some of the beacons, for example, are very cheap for a package. It may be under $100 in some cases for a package of 5 or 10. So some of these things we're not talking thousands of millions of dollars. They're becoming more accessible, more affordable, and now comes the ways in which we can think about how we use them. So one of the things is when, kind of wrapping this back into predictive personalization. So how could we use predictive personalization, the data we've collected, and then be able to connect with the learners to get that information in order to drive them to performance, thinking about the range of 5 moments of learning needs in order to perform, how can we get information or performance support or all those kind of things, thinking about these kind of environments to help teach, reinforce, learn. When something goes wrong, how do I get more information? So I think the key thing here is that there's lots of opportunities with the emerging technologies. I think there great ways that we can really creatively think. And it's not just a physical location, but thinking about how we can start to intake data about how people are using information around them, instruction around them, and in order to perform and using what we've learned about them, better provide them with relevant materials and ultimately allow them to even create more relevant materials. So I know that we're closing in on time. I want to be able to catch up on a couple of questions here. So some of these examples that we can think about using the technology, this is, one very simple, very easy one is being able to walk through a museum, and based off its information about you and the space around you, it's able to give you a much more interactive, customized experience. And to what I would take away from this, or what I might learn about it based on what my desires or interests are. So those are just some of the easy, low-hanging fruit. So looking at the impact of predictive personalization on learning performance, we really got to look at new ways to learn and really trying to connect with the learner's context. Where are they? What are they trying to achieve? What do they need to know? How much contextual information do they need? Do they just need information? And then find out that critical information, that precise moment of need in order to drive that performance. And then the last thing is really connecting the real and the digital, so that all of that information that's stored out there in the vast space of our servers and our hard drives, how do we really make that useful as we go about living our lives in our own space rather than behind our laptops, nestled with our tablets on our couches. As we become more active in our world and actually are performing in our live space, how can we get more information to those people at that point? So I know we're coming in and wanted to take a look at some questions and answers, so I don't know if we've got any coming in. Sue, what do we got?
Thank you, Matt, for the great presentation. We only have a couple of minutes left here, so just as a reminder, if you have a question, be sure to enter it into the Q&A module at this time. So Matt covered a lot in only 20 minutes, and there is still a lot more information to discuss. We encourage you to continue the conversation with him. His contact information is available in this slide deck, and we will send everyone a link to a follow-up blog post where he will address some of today's key takeaways. I would also like to remind you that the recording and slides from today will be sent out to the email address you provided within 48 hours. So it looks like we do have a few questions coming in, Matt. What are the downsides of this technology?
So I think one of the big questions that's out there, and it's prevalent in today's society, is how are people managing the data, who owns the data about, so all the information that's collected about me as an individual, how do I control what that information, where is it stored, how are people using it to really either, help me or to manipulate me? And I think that's the big question, is that is there a way for me to start being able to own my own digital expression, my own information, be able to tweak and shape what people learn about me, interact more about my digital presence. So I think information management will be one of the challenges, privacy, et cetera. Those are I think some of the big challenges we're facing.
Good. Here's another one. What is the cost of some of these initiatives?
Yeah, and so I went over a couple of these, and I think there's a variety of providers out there. For example, some of the, like you could pick up a beacon development kit, for example, with 10 sticker beacons for only $99. So I think, what we're showing is that, and there's several of these things that we have out here, some tools. I know even, for example, some of the virtual goggles, for example, those are coming in under $100. So what we're seeing is an affordability point from a consumer base, and actually much more feasible to provide from an organization for a group of folks.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to give you one more here. Do you have an example of how this information is collected from learners in an organization?
So I think it's a couple of ways early on, and actually if you think about the amount of information an organization already has about you, when it comes in and say that you're an employee of an organization, there's information they capture through your benefits information. There's information that you supply on through your performance review programs, but there's also ways when you're actually reviewing content, consuming content, job aids, performance support pieces, courses you take. There are ways that you can add openings for people to provide information, things I liked, things I didn't like, through behavior. For example, I could rate things like a course. I could rate the value of a piece of content, and every time I actually trigger that behavior, I make that decision, you can learn more about my preferences or what I find relevant or valuable, and can wrap an algorithm to start to predict based on what type of work I'm doing, what are the things I've needed to learn, and by what I've self-selected into, what I've stayed with, what I've chose to contribute to. So there are ways that you can put hooks, I think, within your system and start to track some of that data where people are making decisions.
All right, very good. So we're about a minute over here, so we're going to start wrapping things up. If we didn't address your questions during the Q&A, Matt will address them in the follow-up blog post, and you will get a link to that article in the follow-up email. So thanks again to today's speaker, Matt Donovan, and thanks to everyone who attended for your time and attention. We hope you'll join us again for our last session in the 2015 Learning Trends series on visual learning. A picture is worth an hour of training, being held on January 28th. For GP Strategies, I'm Sue Martin. Have a great day.